What's up everyone, Travis here, or the Modern Realtor, and we're going to make this quick video talking about some common mistakes that buyers make when purchasing their first home or just any home in general. But we're going to talk about some common mistakes, try to avoid them. This isn't going to be one of those videos, your common video where, get a pre-approval, make sure your credit score is good, hire a realtor, even though you should hire a realtor. But I'm gonna dive a little bit deeper into some things that most people don't talk about, but it's definitely something that you should have in mind when purchasing your first home. All right, so the first thing, get a pre-approval. Seriously, when you're getting your pre-approval, think about what the mortgage specialist is telling you. So when you get your pre-approval, this is simply just what you can afford. It's not what you should go out and pay. If you make a lot of money on a monthly basis, guess what? You're gonna be able to pre-qualify for a lot of money, but that doesn't mean that you should get a house for all of that money or max out your complete budget. The bank will look at two main ratios when calculating your pre-approval. They're going to look at your GDS, or your gross debt service ratio, and also your TDS, which is your total debt service ratio. Every file is different, but most banks try to keep your ratio under a certain number. Those numbers are usually 39% for your GDS and 44% for your TDS, but those numbers vary. I've seen different numbers, so really it depends on your case and what your credit score is. So when the bank is looking at your GDS, or your gross debt service ratio, they're basically looking at what your mortgage payments will be, plus your property tax, and plus your heat payments. So all those numbers added together cannot exceed 39% of what your monthly gross pay is. Now I'm saying gross pay. Okay, so this is before taxes are taken out. Then they're gonna look at your TDS, which is your total debt service ratio, and they're gonna basically look at all those three things again: mortgage payments, property tax, heat payments, and any other debt payments that you have to make on a monthly basis. That might be your car, that might be your credit cards, your student loans. All of those combined cannot exceed 44% of your purchase price. I don't know what that sound was, but they cannot exceed 44%. So if you look at your GDS and TDS, if you make $1,000 a month, very round number, if you make $1,000 a month, your mortgage, property tax, and heat bill cannot exceed $390. TDS is the same way. Your mortgage, property taxes, and heat, plus car payment, school loans, credit cards cannot exceed $440. This is basically just a safe number that the bank has that says that you'll be able to pay this money back, because the bank doesn't play around with their money. They're gonna get that money back from you. So this is just the ratios that they mainly look at when pre-qualifying you for a mortgage. But one of the big mistakes that home buyers make, especially first-time home buyers, is that the bank tell the buyer that, look, you can afford a mortgage of $700,000. And that buyer comes to me and says, look, my bank said I can afford $700,000. Let's go look for houses at $700,000. This is what you should try to avoid to do. All because the bank gives you a high ceiling doesn't mean that you should max everything out. Try to stay in a comfortable area, because they base these numbers on your gross pay. So this is before taxes are taken out. So if you go and max out your full GDS, TDS, you might become house poor, and that's exactly what you want to avoid. Obviously, in our market, it's pretty hard to try to stay under budget, but you might have to sacrifice and move a little bit further just to stay in that price range, because I'm telling you, being house poor, it's really hard. It leads to stress. It leads to bad relationships with your family members and loved ones. Just try to avoid it. So what you should try to do is whatever they give you, don't max out, essentially. So keep it as low as possible. Obviously, it's harder said than done, but just keep that in mind when you're purchasing your first house. Next, you're going to want to get your savings in order. Sure, we all know that we're going to have to get our deposit ready, our down payment, and our closing costs when purchasing a house. So obviously, you have to have that money in order to begin with, but also start thinking about separate costs that you might have to look after. Nobody likes to think about it. It's like insurance, but there are emergencies and there are situations where you have to spend additional money that you weren't planning on spending. So really, when you're buying your first house, I would try to set up a couple accounts just as emergency funds. First of all, I think every single person should have at least 3 months worth of mortgage set aside just in case they get laid off, or just in case something happens to their job where you can't work and you can't earn a paycheck. Obviously, COVID just hit less than a year ago, and a lot of people were out on pay, and luckily the government helped helped out as much as they could, but have that emergency fund in hand just to buy you a little bit of time just in case another emergency happens. So keep that money in the bank, keep it in stocks, keep it under your mattress. I don't care. Just have some money put to the side just in case something happens to your salary. Next, I would have another account set aside with just a couple $1,000s in it. If you live in the GTA, you know a lot of the time houses are going for bidding wars and you can't get a home inspection. So I would have a couple $1,000s just laying around just in case home emergencies happen or fixes need to be done. If something breaks in your house, you might have to have a couple $1,000s handy just in case, just to fix it. For instance, your hot water tank breaks. You might have to fix it. It might cost you a couple $1,000. Fix that hot water tank and have hot water. Just have that money set aside. Same thing under your mattress, shoebox, whatever you gotta do. Have a couple $1,000s set aside just in case an emergency happens. The next point, and my favorite point, have a realtor representing you when you're buying your house. You could be a first-time home buyer. You could be a 10-time home buyer. Just have someone representing your best interest. As a buyer, it's completely free. You do not have to pay commission to your buyer agent. So I don't know why you don't think about using one. Literally, it's one of the only times where a service is free. Take advantage of that. Get a great realtor to represent your best interest. I always hear about situations where, buyers come to a house that's for sale on their own and they do the little, hey, I don't have a realtor. I have no one to work with. Since I'm coming directly to you, can you give me a discount? Your seller doesn't have to pay commission, so can I get that discount? Let me get that discount. Hey. And I hear about tons of people getting worked. Like just getting worked by the seller agent. And they should be, because that agent has a fiduciary duty to represent their seller and have their seller's best interest in mind. Next, you're going to want to be mindful of time. Look, buying a home is not a couple month process. There's definitely things that need to be done. And you know what? It is a few months. It takes a while from start to finish, from start to thinking about buying a house to getting the keys in hand. These timelines obviously vary. I've seen some that go very fast and I've seen some that go very long. Shout out to the people that I'm working with right now that I've been working with for over a year. But hey, that's just part of the process. But usually I'd say on average, a timeline usually goes like this. Pre-qualification goes for about 0 to 2 weeks. Then you start looking for homes. That's about 0 to 2 months to find something that you absolutely love. And then once you get an offer accepted, it's about 1 to 3 months to get it closed. There's a lot of moving parts in terms of title search, in terms of the sellers finding their homes. So it's usually about a 1 to 3 months to close and get the keys in your hand. So that alone is over 5 months of the whole process. And obviously those times can be longer, it can be shorter, because some things happen where you're getting your pre-qualification, your credit's not great, so you have to build your credit up a little bit. Or the seller hasn't bought a home yet, they need at least 4 months to find a home. So these times vary, but usually just have a great idea that, once I decide I'm gonna buy a home, it's not just a 1 to 2 month process. There's definitely some work that has to be done, and it could take a few months at the end of the day. And finally, one of the most important points, what you should try to avoid as a first-time home buyer, is looking for something that doesn't exist or chasing that golden goose, whatever that saying is. Don't go and look for something that does not exist. If your home budget is $600,000 and that home is listed for $599 with an offer date, your agent shouldn't have even showed you it to begin with. But most of the time, these offer dates, these prices that you're seeing, or if you're in the GTA market, the Greater Toronto area market, house prices aren't exactly what they show. They might be listed at one thing, but then they are selling for $300,000 above asking, $500,000 above asking, and it's way over your budget. So I would be wary. I would tell your agent to look at the recent sales in the area before you even look at it, before you even go and see it in person, because you might just be wasting your time. And try not to wait and time up the market. If your dad's telling you, don't worry about it, don't buy a house right now, prices are too high. I bought a 4-bedroom house in Vaughan for $400,000 10 years ago. Just wait for the prices to drop. You're gonna be waiting forever. I hear it all the time. Look, everyone's always trying to time up the market crash here in the Greater Toronto area, but it's too hard to predict. It really is. Our immigration is so great that house prices here are gonna probably stay the same for a long time, especially with mortgage rates being as low as they are. So be realistic with the market and be realistic with what you can afford. You might have to move a little little bit further for your first home. But I always like to tell people, get into the market and start building equity. From there, you can move up and you can do what me and my wife did, as you've seen in the last video over here. It's probably over here. I probably did it the wrong way. I've never did this before, but hey, start somewhere, start building equity, and you'll be able to see these little wins, these little gains, and eventually you'll be in the house of your dreams. Thank you so much for watching. These are just a few things that you want to avoid when being a first-time home buyer. Everyone's different and things might be different for you wherever you are. But again, thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions, please post them down below and I'll do my best to answer them as much as I can. Like this video if you learned anything from it. And again, punch the subscribe button. Road to 1,000, baby. We're trying to be consistent, 2 videos a week. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.